All right, this is Books We Know and Love.
Are we doing the books thing?
How's it going? I'm Justin Kahn from Justin.tv.
Today, I've brought one of my closest friends, Jason Tan, entrepreneur, amazing human being, one of the best people I know, constantly inspires me. I try to surround myself with people who inspire me, people who I want to be more like. Those are the types of people I want to spend time around, and Jason is one of those people. He introduced me to a bunch of different things on my personal growth journey. For that, I'll be forever thankful. Today, we're going to talk about some books that have inspired us and hopefully will inspire you. So if you don't know Jason, he's founder and executive chairman of Sift, the fraud detection company. Jason founded Sift and was CEO for the first 10 years, raised $150 million in capital, and the company's now a unicorn company. So it's not bad. He's joining me today, and we're going to tell you about some of the books that have inspired us throughout our career that we found helpful, both on our entrepreneurial careers and then also on our wellness journeys. One last thing I'll say, in addition to being one of the most successful founders I know, Jason is also somebody who's been deep on the personal growth and spiritual path, and he constantly inspires me.
Oh, thank you.
So let's get started. You want to start with a book that you love first?
Sure. Oh, this is one of my favorite books too, just from a storytelling perspective. It's written by the founder of Nike, Phil Knight, and it's just an insane story of grit and luck and working hard and making the most of your shot. And just really inspiring when you hear about how close Nike came to dying and multiple times not getting what it needed to continue, and yet somehow they found a way. And their culture just really shines through in this book, and it's become one of the most loved and respected and valuable businesses out there. And so, yeah.
But let me ask you something about this book. When you read the book, did you kind of get the impression that he was a little bit of a dick the whole time?
I mean, his ego shines through. His ego really shines through. But I have this belief that to be a successful entrepreneur, you do have to have a bit of ego. You have to have this crazy belief that you can change the world, that you can build $1 billion company. And I mean, hopefully that doesn't get in the way of being kind to others and whatnot, but you do have to have this self-centered, self-absorbedness that you're gonna be able to make something happen, right? And other people are gonna doubt you, and you have to believe and have the confidence that you can still do it anyway. So it's this healthy balance of ego and being conscious.
All right, what else are we?
This one, classic.
Oh, I was looking for that on your shelf.
The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. This book was actually recommended to me by Justin, and I read it, and then I actually started working with one of the authors as my executive coach. For all you founders out there, I strongly recommend you invest in an executive coach. Think of yourself as like a high-performance professional athlete, and professional athletes have all sorts of coaches. Why shouldn't you? So that would be my advice. This book has just a lot of really great wisdom about how to approach leadership from a more heart-centered place, a more ego-less place, with less fear and more curiosity. And maybe we can talk about some of the concepts.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So it's basically 15 values that a conscious company has. 15 is a lot, to be honest. So there's kind of 3 main ones they talk about that are the most important ones. And those are taking responsibility for what's going on around you. So if you feel like you have agency for what's going on around you. The second is approaching things with an open and curious mindset. When something happens, instead of being like, oh shit, that happened, it sucks. It being like, what can I learn from this? Being curious about what the experience is, why it's happening, being open and seeing it as a possibility. The third thing is being able to bring your whole emotional self to work. Human beings are complex, and we all have emotions, whether we like to admit it or not. And being able to use those emotions as a signal instead of something to stuff down and forget about is a really powerful tool to make you more effective, and you're gonna feel better at work. I guarantee it.
One of the concepts I really use day to day is this drama triangle. So if you imagine a triangle with 3 points, hero, villain, and victim. And if I find myself on one of those 3 points, if I find myself playing the role of a hero, villain, or victim, I'm often swept up in drama. And so for me, learning how to recognize that I'm stepping into one of those roles unconsciously, and I need to pull myself out of the triangle. I want to be above the triangle and not stuck in one of those roles. And there's this other concept of, am I taking 100% responsibility or 120% or 80%, right? And if I'm taking 80% responsibility, then I'm playing more of the victim, right? I'm not taking full responsibility. I'm saying, oh, this is happening to me. I have no control. And if I'm taking 120% responsibility, I'm playing the hero role. I'm taking on more than I should, more guilt than I should, whatever it is. So really trying to learn how to operate at that zone of 100% responsibility so I can step out of the drama triangle.
I was going to say 80% responsibility. That's still a lot. I mean, I've been in places where I'm at 0% responsibility. I'm like, shit is happening.
50%
shit is happening to me. People think, as the founder of a company or as an entrepreneur, it's easy to be like, oh, you have 100% responsibility, right? As you're in control of your own fate. But no matter who you are and what position you are, you could be the CEO of a multi-thousand person company and be in the mindset of taking 0% responsibility. And what that looks like is you're saying, this product didn't work. I had this great vision and the team didn't execute right, or the market wasn't there, and that all happened to me, right? You're the victim in that scenario. No matter what your actual job title is, you can always be the victim. And when you're in a victim mindset, it's really hard to get out of it. It's hard to get momentum. You feel like shit. It's just a negative headspace to be in. And so the book is all about how do you put yourself in a place where you have agency?
Yeah. There's another framework that the book offers, 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. It really is the universe happening to you, by you, for you, or through you? And the to you is where we often start off as a default mindset that we have no control and we're really just a victim. And so learning to evolve beyond the to you mindset into the for you, by you, through you. And each of those have their own purpose in different situations, and it's talked about in the book. But that's been really helpful for me, feeling like I have more power than I realized to reframe situations, to take events that happen in my life and not react the way I used to.
Yeah, it starts to get confusing with those like as you, or there was one where I didn't get, it was one that was like, you are the universe. It was like a non-dual management philosophy, you are the universe. And it got a little confusing, but it is super helpful. All right, let's keep going. Next, here's one of my favorite books. It's called The Untethered Soul. And this book was really impactful to me. It basically introduces Eastern philosophical concepts to the West. So ideas of the witness, you being an observer of what's going on instead of the person who's actually in the movie. Oftentimes we think, we're identified with our thoughts. We're identified with what's happening to us. We're like, that's who we think we are. And in this book, it kind of defines, well, actually, you're the observer. It's like you're a guy watching a movie in a movie theater, and the movie might be, James Bond or whatever. You're not James Bond. You're immersed in it. You're sucked into it oftentimes, but you're actually not the character. You're actually just the observer that's observing the thoughts, feelings, and physiological sensations float by. And I found that was an incredibly powerful concept to be able to surrender the experience of being a human being. Instead of getting swept along with whatever was happening, like shit is happening to me, it's like I'm feeling like I'm getting pulled along in the river of life. It made it much, much easier when I understood this to kind of sit on the river banks and just see what's happening and see it float by without getting too drawn into it.
Yeah, and for those of you who, follow Justin's videos, he's big on meditation, or maybe another word for that is mindfulness. And I really define that practice as just non-judgmental awareness and building that muscle over time. And so for me, just being able to almost like take a camera and put it over my mind and body and soul and have myself watch myself from this third-party perspective and noticing the sensations in my body, noticing emotions arising, noticing that I'm clenching my fists, noticing that my eyebrows are furrowed, whatever it is, just being able to witness it without any judgment, not thinking it's bad or good, just watching it. That's been really powerful to help my leadership and personal growth. And I find myself less reactive because I can put some space between stimulus and response.
Beautiful. All right, here's a business book that I really love. Well, it's not really a business book, but there's this book, Influence, by Robert Cialdini. I first read in college in psychology class. It outlines a bunch of methods for how people influence other people. And if you're an entrepreneur, really this is important for like anyone who's in the world, but if you're an entrepreneur especially, a lot of what you do is influence, whether it's influencing people to use your product, or it's influencing your team and employees to move towards a specific goal. And so I love this book because it outlines like all of these different ways, almost like psychological ways that people create influence.
Yeah. A couple of anecdotes from this book. One is they tell the story of how when you show up at a certain airport, I think it's in India, there's a lot of women who will give you a flower. And because they give you this flower, there's almost an expectation of reciprocity that you give some money in exchange or something else. And this idea of, we as social animals, as humans, really
wired for reciprocity.
Yeah, and that's a powerful way to leverage influence in relationships, right? You do something for someone, and not that there's an expectation, but it's almost like they expect themselves to do something back for you. And then there's also, it talks about, pricing. Talk about TVs that are, there's 4 different prices of TVs, and almost always the second highest price is going to be the most common choice. No one's going to buy the highest price. They're going to buy the second highest price. And so you can use that to your advantage as you think about pricing your products and playing the market.
There's a lot in here. Read it this way. Not this one.
This is a...
oh, that's a good one.
This one's an unusual one. It's got this word in the title that I didn't really identify myself with, the artist's way, but I really appreciate this insight, which is that we are all creative people in our hearts and minds. We were all born with this incredible creativity, and we just need to learn to exercise that creativity every day and to feel free in our creativity. And there's a simple concept in this book, a simple exercise that my girlfriend and I did it's been powerful. It's called morning pages, where every day in the morning, the first thing you do before you start your day is just write 3 pages of whatever comes to your mind, non-judgmental, just writing of whatever comes, and let the pen
Stream
flow.
of consciousness.
Stream of consciousness. And you just practice that muscle. When we did this for a few months, if you practice that muscle, you start tapping into your true creative self. And I think really, learning how to reconnect with our true creative selves. And creativity doesn't mean you have to be a musician. It doesn't mean you have to be an artist in that sense of the word. It just means that you have this unbridled freedom of expression that you can always tap into. I think that we often go through life with experiences that tell us that expression is wrong or not worthy of love, and that kind of makes us feel small. And then we sort of stop being creative in that way. And so learning to reconnect with that has been really powerful for my growth.
Yeah, I did the art morning pages every day for a couple months, and it was pretty cool. It unlocked a lot of creativity in me, and I definitely recommend people try it out.
Yeah.
All right, here's another book that I love. It's called Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, and this book is a work of fiction. It was written by this, I think he was from Sweden. No, he was Swiss. I'm gonna look like an idiot. It's about this guy in India who is on a quest for enlightenment, Siddhartha. He grows up as the son of like a very rich family, and it follows him becoming an ascetic, and then he becomes a merchant, and then becomes a riverman, like a ferry guy, like he's ferrying people across a river, that guy. And through the book, it follows him his whole life and on his quest for enlightenment. And I won't spoil the ending, but it's just a beautiful book that has really inspired me many a time. And one of the things that happens in the book, his son, has a son, and his son is making all these mistakes, and he wants to shortcut his son so that he doesn't have to learn all the lessons that he learned the hard way. And in the book, his friend tells him, hey, you can't deprive, there's basically, his friend tells him there's, some lessons people have to learn for themselves. And I've always thought that, that has been a lesson I've taken with me throughout my whole life. Boop, boop, boop.
Okay, this one's a bit of an out there recommendation, but for those of you who are looking for something that might expand your worldview and maybe push your comfort zone and how to think about yourself and how you relate to the universe, Conversations with God. Justin and I did this this podcast where we talked about our ayahuasca journey on the quest. And after my ayahuasca experience, this book really helped me made sense of what I experienced on the journey. It's a really powerful perspective on this idea that the universe actually started off as a whole being, and we already were all one, and then we broke ourselves up into small pieces and forgot who we are. And over time, we're on this journey to collectively remember that we were actually of one consciousness and that we are actually all connected. And intuitively, it makes sense a lot in my heart when I read this. And so, yeah, if you want something kind of more spiritual, highly recommend this one.
Conversations with God. Another book I want to tell you about, if you haven't read it, is Shogun by James Clavell. It's my favorite work of fiction. It's about this guy who gets, this British sailor gets marooned in feudal Japan in 1600, and he plops down in the center of political intrigue. But it's an amazing book because, well, it's just like a really well-written book and really brings you into the life of the characters like any good work of fiction does. Probably find this funny, but there's been a lot of lessons I've taken from that book and applied to my startup career. One great example is back in the day, we had Justin TV before we had Twitch. It was a live streaming site, and anyone could come and stream whatever they wanted. And one of the things that people would stream on occasion was other people's content, but it was live, so it was very hard to police. And there were 1,000 streams happening at any given time, so we didn't have control. So I remember one time a soccer match was streamed, and the rights holders of the soccer match were like, "We're gonna sue you, because this thing was streamed on your site, unless you pay us $150,000, which was maybe how much they spent on the rights. I don't know. They wanted 150 grand, and my co-founder Michael was like, "Well, I guess we have to pay them, or we have to fight this lawsuit." Anyways, back to Shogun. In the book, one of the tactics of one of the main characters, Toranaga, is that he always delays. When he's faced with a tough decision, instead of making it one way or the other, he just says, I'm not going to decide right now. And then he just waits and sees what will happen. Maybe there's new options that open up. So I was like channeling Toranaga, and I'm like, no, let's just wait and see what happens. Let's just wait. We went back to them and said, we had gone back to them and said, hey, instead of $150,000, why don't we give you $30,000 in free advertising on Justin TV? And they were like, no, that's not acceptable. We want cash. And you have to, tell us, if you're going to pay us or not. Otherwise, we're going to file this lawsuit. I was like, let's not respond. Let's just see what happens. Let's wait. And that Michael was super shocked. But then we did. That's what we did. We waited. And 6 weeks later, they came back and they were like, we'll take that free advertising. So when you're faced with a tough decision that you don't want to make, sometimes the best move is just don't make it. Have you ever employed that tactic?
It's counterintuitive.
Right.
Because I'm trying to learn how to be more decisive, actually.
Oh, really?
I actually do a pretty good job of kicking the can down the road. This book, Dare to Lead by Brené Brown, if you haven't watched her TED Talk about vulnerability, I highly recommend it. This has probably been one of the most important books in my business career for stepping up as a leader. One of the core ideas in this is that vulnerability is strength. This is something that I did not understand growing up. I thought that to show emotion, to tell people how I really felt, to talk about what I was worried about as a CEO, as a founder, would be perceived as weakness. And I think this book has really changed my mind and made me believe that if I really want to connect with others as a leader, which I think is one of the most important parts of great leadership, is earning other people's trust and earning other people's belief in me. Connecting with them requires vulnerability, and opening up our hearts and saying how we really feel is not something that I think is that normalized in business culture, especially in Silicon Valley. Fake it until you make it is something I really dislike as what we preach. And so learning how to just really sit with that discomfort of sharing how I really feel with someone. But in the times I have done this now in the last few years, it's been powerfully connecting, and it builds a lot of trust and connection quickly. And highly recommend using this as a management Bible. We actually have done this at Sift. We train all of our managers using this book because I think it's so powerful for effective leadership.
Dude, I love that. I love that you give that to everyone at Sift. It's really powerful. Being willing to be vulnerable, it actually counterintuitively, people see you as stronger. Because they're like, oh, that's one part of what I get. The feedback I get on this YouTube all the time is people are like, oh, wow, that was really vulnerable. And like, you are so confident to be able to say that. Or like, well, I really admire you because of that,
Yeah.
And that's one thing I found that's like you said, is very counterintuitive.
Well, we did this program together called Leaders in Tech, and it's based on the Stanford Business School class called Touchy Feely, very famous class, one of the most popular classes out there. And the core idea is so simple, but actually really hard to do, at least in my experience. And it's to just say the words, I feel, and then blank, and replace the blank with an actual feeling word. So you can't cheat and say, I feel that, ... or I feel like ... You need to say something like, I feel sad. I feel hurt. I feel embarrassed. I feel ashamed. It doesn't have to be negative emotions, by the way, but for me personally, part of my journey that I'm still on is learning how to tap into those negative emotions and actually expressing them. My girlfriend gave me feedback that when we first started dating 3.5 years ago, that I was a robot and I would shut down when I was starting to feel these negative emotions. And I was really surprised because people tell me I'm, easy to talk to, approachable, life of the party, whatever. So I was trying to reconcile it, but I realized through this program that we did that, yeah, when it came to negative emotions, I would withhold them. And that's not creating connection. That's not being vulnerable. So it takes real courage to actually, say how you feel in the moment. But when you do, it gives others permission and inspires them to do the same and reciprocate, going back to that concept earlier. And that's how you can really get deep with someone.
For sure. I feel like bringing it full circle back to the very first book, bring your emotions to work and to your life, and being able to wholly feel your emotions and accept them is a superpower. I spent so much of my life trying to run from my negative emotions. Like, I was very conflict avoidant, so if I felt angry at somebody, I wouldn't say it. I would just stuff it down, often with a healthy dose of alcohol. But that never works. It always bubbles back up. And so if you can confront your emotions, be present with your emotions in a very positive way, like, oh, I feel angry, I'm just gonna accept that. I feel angry, and I'm going to figure out how to take steps so that I don't feel that way in the future. A lot of good can come from that. All right, I think that's a lot.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Click like and subscribe, and Justin will be your best friend.
He's got it. I just met someone on the street, by the way, who was like, I was one of your first TikTok founders. Apparently I spoke at his school 6 years ago and inspired the shit out of me, and he went and started a startup. We didn't talk for that long, but apparently it's a real company. I told him he owes me royalties on that startup. So we'll see if my check ever arrives. But Frankie, if you're out there, shout out to you. Thanks for following. And if you're listening to this video, shout out to you. You could be the next Frankie. You are the next Frankie. Thank you so much for listening to the video. I appreciate you. You know what to do. Smash subscribe, bang that like button, and I'll be your best friend forever.